Diaspora Faith Challenge. Imagine the sound of a prayer, a chant, echoing not through the stone-carved churches of Lalibela, but through the steel and glass canyons of a modern metropolis. This isn't a historical reenactment. This is the living, breathing reality for millions in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo diaspora. They are the custodians of an ancient flame, tasked with keeping it alive in a world that often seems designed to extinguish it. This is the story of their struggle, their resilience, and the profound identity crisis that defines their existence. At its heart is one critical question. How do you preserve a faith that is thousands of years old, woven into the very fabric of a specific land and culture, when you are thousands of miles away from home? The challenge is immense, a daily battle fought not on a battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of parents, priests, and a new generation born into a world of bewildering choice and relentless modernity. To grasp the scale of this challenge, we must first understand what's at stake. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church is not just another Christian denomination. It is an institution of staggering antiquity, one of the oldest Christian bodies in the world. Its roots sink deep into the soil of the 4th century Kingdom of Aksum, when King Ezana declared Christianity the state religion. This was centuries before the faith had even fully taken hold across most of Europe. But the story goes back even further, into the realm of sacred tradition. Ethiopians trace their faith back to the time of the apostles, to the story of the Ethiopian eunuch baptized by Philip, and even further to the legendary union of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, whose son, Menelik I, is said to have brought the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia. While the historical location of the Ark remains a matter of faith, its significance is undeniable. It places Ethiopia at the very center of its own biblical narrative, creating a unique and fiercely independent spiritual identity. This independence was solidified by a pivotal moment in theological history, the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD. This council led to a major schism in the Christian world. The Ethiopian Church, along with the Coptic, Armenian, and Syriac churches, rejected the Chalcedonian definition of Christ's nature. This earned them the label Miaphysite, or Oriental Orthodox. They hold to the Tewahedo doctrine, a Ge'ez word meaning made one or unified, which professes the unified nature of Christ, both divine and human, inseparable and unconfused. This theological distinction is not some dusty historical footnote, it is the bedrock of their identity. It set the Church on its own unique trajectory, allowing it to develop its own liturgy, its own sacred language, its own art, and its own calendar, largely isolated from the rest of Christendom. This isolation, protected by the rugged Ethiopian highlands, created a fortress of faith, a spiritual time capsule that preserved practices and traditions from the early Christian era. Now, picture this fortress being dismantled, not by force, but by migration. Starting in the latter half of the 20th century, particularly after the fall of Emperor Haile Selassie and the rise of the oppressive Derg regime, waves of Ethiopians left their homeland. They fled political persecution and economic hardship, seeking refuge and opportunity in North America, Europe, and Australia. They brought with them their language, their food, their culture, and most importantly, their Tewahedo faith. In these new lands, they immediately set about rebuilding their spiritual home, establishing churches in rented halls, storefronts, and eventually in magnificent, purpose-built structures that mimic the architecture of their ancestral land. But this new environment presented a threat more insidious than any they had faced before. It wasn't persecution, it was assimilation. It was the slow, steady drip of secularism, individualism, and a culture of convenience that stands in stark opposition to a faith demanding discipline, community, and reverence for ancient tradition. The crisis of the diaspora is a generational one. For the first generation, the immigrants who remembered Ethiopia, the church was a non-negotiable lifeline. It was a sanctuary, a community center, a place to speak their native tongue and connect with their roots. The chants and prayers were second nature, the rhythms of the liturgical calendar as familiar as their own heartbeat. But for their children, born in Toronto, London, or Washington, D.C., the connection is more tenuous. They navigate a dual identity, speaking English at school and Amharic or Tigrinya at home. They listen to hip-hop and pop music, but are expected to appreciate the complex, centuries-old chants of Saint Yared. They are caught between the ancient and the immediate, the sacred and the secular. The profound, slow-paced mystery of a 3-hour liturgy competes with the instant gratification of a smartphone screen. This is the core of the challenge: how to translate the depth and meaning of this ancient faith to a generation that speaks a different cultural language. What is lost if they fail? It is not merely a religion. It is the loss of a direct, living connection to one of the world's great unbroken Christian traditions. It is the potential silencing of a sacred language, the fading of a unique cultural identity, and the breaking of a chain that links a child in a Western suburb to the kings of Aksum and the saints of the early church. The answer to how they fight this battle lies in the very heart of their worship, in the sacred sounds and ancient rites they are so desperate to preserve. Block 2. Ge'ez and Sacred Rites. At the very core of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church's identity, and central to its survival in the diaspora, is a language that most of the world has never heard of: Ge'ez. This is not a dialect or a colloquial tongue. It is an ancient Semitic language, the progenitor of modern Amharic and Tigrinya, and a cousin to Hebrew and Arabic. Today, Ge'ez is almost exclusively a liturgical language. It is the sound of heaven on earth, the sacred vessel that carries the prayers, hymns, and theology of the Church, unchanged for over 1,600 years. To be in a Tewahedo church during the Divine Liturgy, known as the Massacaya, is to be transported back in time. The air grows thick with the sweet smell of incense, and the space is filled with the continuous, hypnotic sound of priests and cantors chanting in Ge'ez. For the faithful, this is not just an aesthetic experience. They believe that this is the language of the angels, the celestial tongue in which God is praised in heaven. Its preservation is therefore not a matter of cultural preference, but of theological necessity. The beauty of the liturgy is not just in the language, but in its intricate musicality. The entire system of Ethiopian Orthodox chant, or mushani, is attributed to a single 6th century musical genius, Saint Yared. Legend tells that he was taken to heaven by angels, where he learned the celestial melodies. He returned to earth and codified these chants into a complex system of musical notation, creating a vast repertoire for every feast, fast, and season of the liturgical year. This isn't simple, repetitive chanting. Saint Yared developed 3 distinct melodic modes, or mat, to convey different spiritual moods: the resonant and solemn Ge'ez mode for regular days, the sorrowful and plaintive Izel for fasts and funerals, and the joyful, uplifting Ararai for major feasts. These melodies are sung by specially trained cantors, known as Badokai, who often spend decades mastering the intricate nuances of the chants. Accompanying them are instruments with direct biblical lineage. The gentle shaking of the kolhora, a metallic rattle, is believed to have been used in the worship of the ancient temple in Jerusalem. The deep, resonant beat of the tabla, a large double-headed drum, recalls the Psalms of King David, who danced and played before the Ark of the Covenant. This is a full-bodied sensory worship, designed to engage the whole person, mind, body, and soul, and lift them into a state of spiritual contemplation. This rich tapestry of sound is matched by an equally rich visual theology. Step into any Diaspora Tewahedo church, and you are immediately surrounded by a riot of color and imagery. The walls are covered in icons and frescoes, painted in a distinctive style that, while sharing roots with Byzantine art, is uniquely Ethiopian. The figures are often depicted with large, almond-shaped, expressive eyes, which are seen as the windows to the soul. They are not meant to be photorealistic portraits, but spiritual representations, theological statements in paint and color.
Each icon is a sermon, a story, a window into the divine. They depict scenes from the Bible, the lives of saints and martyrs, with a special emphasis on figures of particular importance to Ethiopia, like St. George, the dragon slayer, who is seen as a national protector. For a community that historically had low rates of literacy, this visual storytelling was the primary method of religious education. Today, in the diaspora, it serves a similar purpose, providing an immediate, powerful visual link to the faith for children who may not yet understand the complexities of the Ge'ez liturgy. But how is this incredibly complex heritage, a dead language, an ancient musical system, a unique artistic tradition, passed on to a generation growing up with Spotify and TikTok? This is where the true dedication of the diaspora communities shines. It is a monumental grassroots effort. In almost every parish, from Stockholm to Sydney, you will find weekend and summer schools. Here, volunteers, deacons, and priests patiently teach children the building blocks of their faith. They start with the Katia, the Ge'ez script, an alphabet as foreign to them as any other. They progress to memorizing basic prayers, the Lord's Prayer, the Hail Mary, the Nicene Creed, all in Ge'ez. They learn the basic responses of the Khazars so they can participate in the service. The most dedicated students move on to learn the Mushani, the sacred chants, practicing for hours to master the precise pitch and rhythm. This is a slow, arduous process. It requires immense patience from the teachers and incredible commitment from the students and their parents, who sacrifice their weekends to ensure this knowledge is not lost. It is a quiet, determined revolution against forgetting. They are not just learning a language, they are being initiated into a sacred tradition, forging a personal connection to the sounds and symbols that have defined their people for millennia. This intense focus on preserving the sacred rites is the primary weapon in the fight against assimilation. It's an attempt to build an identity so strong, so deep, and so meaningful that it can withstand the pressures of the outside world. But this battle for the soul requires more than just language and ritual. It requires a community.
Block 3. Identity and community. While the sacred rites and the Ge'ez language form the spiritual core of Ethiopian Orthodoxy, the Church in the diaspora plays an equally vital role as a social and cultural anchor. For many, the church is not just a building they visit for a few hours on a Sunday. It is the center of their universe. It's a slice of Ethiopia, a home away from home. The moment you step through the doors, you are transported. The formal, solemn atmosphere of the Middle gives way to a joyous, bustling scene. The air fills with the aroma of spicy and the sound of friends and families catching up in Amharic and Tigrinya. Community halls overflow with people sharing a communal meal, centered around laba, the spongy flatbread that is a staple of Ethiopian cuisine. Here, business connections are made, newcomers are welcomed, support is offered to those in need, and marriages are arranged. The church functions as an all-encompassing social safety net, recreating the tight-knit village life that was left behind. It's a place where you are not a minority, where your name is not considered foreign, and where your cultural norms are understood without explanation. This communal bond is the fertile ground in which a strong, resilient identity can grow. However, this very strength creates a tension for the younger generation. They live in two worlds. Inside the church, they are Ethiopian. Outside, they are American, Canadian, or British. They navigate the complex codes of conduct of both cultures, often feeling like they don't fully belong to either. The pressures to assimilate are immense. The individualistic, success-driven ethos of Western society can seem at odds with the communal, faith-centered values taught by the church. Youth see their non-Ethiopian friends with fewer social and religious obligations and can sometimes view the church's strict traditions and long services as a burden. This is the identity crisis in its most personal form, a struggle to reconcile the ancient heritage of their parents with the modern world they inhabit. It's a constant negotiation of self.
The danger is that without a strong foundation, they will choose the path of least resistance, slowly drifting away from the community and, with them, the future of the faith in the diaspora. Recognizing this existential threat, diaspora churches have become incredibly proactive in youth engagement. They understand they cannot simply demand attendance. They must actively foster a sense of belonging and make the faith relevant to the lives of their young members. This has led to the creation of vibrant youth associations, or amadava. These groups provide a crucial space for young people to connect with peers who share their unique cultural background. They organize Bible studies in English, hold discussions about the challenges of living as an Orthodox Christian in a secular society, and run mentorship programs. They form youth choirs that master the ancient chants of Saint Yared, giving them an active role in the liturgy rather than being passive observers. They organize sports teams, cultural dance troupes, and volunteer initiatives, turning the church into a hub of positive social activity. By doing so, they are consciously building a hybrid identity. They are showing the youth that it is possible to be both fully modern and fully Ethiopian Orthodox, that faith is not a relic of the past, but a living guide for the present. Perhaps the most powerful expression of this vibrant, resilient identity is seen during major religious festivals. Celebrations like Deacons and Natsu are not confined to the church walls. They spill out into the streets of their adopted cities. Entire communities take to the streets in a dazzling procession of faith. Dressed in traditional white clothing, they parade through parks and public spaces, chanting, drumming, and carrying replicas of the Ark of the Covenant, known as chorus, on their heads. For a day, a park in London or a street in Washington, D.C. is transformed into a sacred space, a piece of Ethiopia. These festivals are a profound public affirmation of their identity and a powerful teaching tool for the young. It shows them that their faith is not something to be hidden, but something to be celebrated with pride and joy. It connects them in a very tangible way to centuries of their ancestors who celebrated in the exact same manner. This is the reality of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church in the diaspora. It is a story of a community facing the immense pressures of a globalized secular world. But it is not a story of decline. It is a testament to incredible resilience, strategic adaptation, and an unwavering commitment to preserving an ancient spiritual treasure. They are using modern tools to safeguard ancient traditions, building strong communities to anchor a new generation. The identity crisis is real, the challenges are ongoing, but the unbroken chain of faith, stretching back nearly 2 millennia, remains strong. One prayer, one chant, one community at a time.